On this episode of the Grow Your Video Business podcast, we go over the difference between 1099 contractors and W-2 employees and why is it even important for you to know it is, and that's what we go over. We also talk about how to classify 1099 and employees correctly to avoid massive penalties and fees. And finally, what to do if you have misclassified yourself or someone that works for you. All this and more in this live replay of a workshop that I did with Jeremy Doorn, who is from Core Group, one of our main sponsors. Let's get into our what is it called? Let's get into our ad, and then we'll jump right into the live chat that we did. And we also engaged with our audience and did a bunch of Q&A stuff. If you are interested in being a part of something like this in the future, make sure that you are a part of the Grow Your Video Business Facebook group. It's a free group. Just search Facebook, Grow Your Video Business. Would love to see you inside of there. And then you can participate in stuff like this, and it's free. So, okay, let's roll that ad and then jump into the episode, into this episode. Ugh. If there was one thing that could have ended my business 17 years ago, it would be because of the numbers. I hate accounting, taxes, W-9s, W-2s, W-40s, spreadsheets, all of that stuff. And I hate it mostly because I'm afraid of it. I'm just not great with numbers. If this sounds familiar, or if you're so new in your business that it's not even on your radar yet, you need Core Group. Core Group can help you create financial systems and tax strategies that you need so you can grow profitably, and they've been doing this for over 20 years. They become an extension of your team so that you can stay in your lane of expertise and then lean on them to help guide you along the way. For me, having a team of experts in my corner to help keep track of our books and just to make sure that we're budgeting for taxes appropriately, to have an actual strategy for our taxes and our accounting is priceless. And it allows me to sleep easier at night, knowing that I don't have to be an expert in that arena. If you want to avoid surprises in your video business, and you want experienced help building a plan for the future that you want, both professionally and personally, head over to studiosherpas.com/core for more information. And when you're ready to set up a free consult with them, make sure to mention Studio Sherpas for a special discount too. Got your back. Get more out of your accountant. Go to studiosherpas.com/core. Ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to the Grow Your Video Business podcast. What's up, everybody? This is the live episode, the live version of the episode. Today, I am with my man, Jeremy Doorn, in the house from Core Group. It's www.coregroup.us.com/. Sorry, I was making fun of Jeremy earlier because I asked him for a link, and he's like, he starts telling me it's a www. Thank you again for the dubs, the W's.
It just makes me sound so old. That makes me so sad. That's funny. Oh, I'm going to have to not do that next time.
Oh, man. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. If you are, there should be a little link where you can, if you're going to chat with us, you click on a thing that enables your profile picture to pop up. And then we can see your face and see your name so that we can actually address you. So format for today, we're going to be talking about the difference between 1099 and W-2 employees. Is that how you say it? 1099 contractors and W-2 employees. Is that the right way? Okay, yeah. So we're going to be talking about the differences there, which can actually save you a ton of money, heartache, and just lots of trouble if you do this the right way. So the moral of the story, if you don't want to listen to the whole episode, then just listen to this. Do the right thing. That's what Jeremy said right before we got on today. He said, just do the right thing. Does that kind of sums everything up?
That sums everything up.
Okay.
Easier said than done, but do the right thing.
All right, let's just go. Let's be done. And, we've just left our mark here.
Wednesday is done. I'm
Good
out.
night. Okay, peace. Yes. So, Jeremy, thanks again for joining us. Thank you for all of the work that you do for Tell Studios and Studio Sherpas and Ryan Coral for finances, taxes, blah blah blah. You guys are the best, and I love you long time.
Well, thank you. We love you too. Thank you for having me.
So Jeremy Doorn is the relationship manager at Core Group. And Jeremy, what would you say your main responsibility is? How do you save people's lives with the work that you do at Core Group?
That is very dramatic, but it makes me sound very important.
Well,
We help small businesses grow profitably by helping them reduce their tax bill, doing tax planning, saving taxes, and just planning for what's coming, right? As far as taxes, as far as financials go, and we give them timely financial information to help make better decisions in their small businesses. So.
and I am a living testimony. If you've ever gone to, I think it's just studiosherpas.com/core, you'll see a fun little testimonial that I did for Core Group, because literally, Jeremy just has saved the day multiple times, but actually helped me get like $20,000 from the government that I was not planning on getting any of it actually to start with, and then I was going to get about $10,000, and then he said, hey, don't forget about this, and I was like, oh, okay, and then it turned into like $21,000. So many thanks. And did you get my Starbucks gift card, by the way?
I don't know if I got that or not, but I think so.
I bought you a $6 drink, so thank you again for
Yeah.
doing your job, man.
Yes. It only cost you $6 and you got $20,000, so it's good.
Yes. So, and this kind of goes, I just had a conversation, another podcast interview recently, and we were kind of talking about when you start your business, it's like, why would I ever pay somebody to like do my taxes? That's what TurboTax is for. That's what, there's plenty of like videos on YouTube or like other people that could help me. And yes, that is sort of true. But when you have somebody that's in your corner that can help you with the strategy in like the big picture and actually have a, two-way conversation, when you hire an expert, a consultant, somebody that can do more than just plug in the numbers, but somebody that has your best interest in mind and knows more of like the moving parts, it pays in dividends. So while it might be easier and cheaper to just do this stuff yourself, if you're like me, you'd want to pull your hair out or poke your eyeballs out doing it yourself. And then there's a medium ground. You could hire somebody to kind of come alongside, maybe do some bookkeeping stuff or just piecemeal this thing, and that's what we did for a long time. And then when we finally started working with Core Group, everything got better. It was sort of like having one place for us to go and have these financial conversations versus like different people, different companies, different they don't know our strategy or necessarily they're not on the same page. So it just makes everything a lot harder. And yeah, it costs a little bit more than free or really, really cheap. But sometimes cheap has a price, and a lot of times most people can't afford that, right? Am I right?
A lot of times you get what you pay for. I mean, that it's very cliche, but I think it's very true. A lot of times you do get what you pay for.
Yeah.
I mean, TurboTax has its place. It's obviously very successful and probably makes Intuit or whoever owns it a lot of money. And that's fine for somebody with a super simple tax return. But when you start getting into business taxes, even the tax returns themselves, I mean, it's just a tax return. It's literally a scoreboard of what happened last year, right? So that's great. All we're doing is reporting what happened last year. But it's the work that you need to do throughout the year to plan for those taxes, to minimize them, to just plan for what's going to be happening this year, what's going to be happening next year, and just being able to look at that and help your business grow that way, for sure.
Yeah, and part of if I'm just starting out or like this year's starting out kind of slow, but like second half of the year, like everything ramps up and we're doing like 10x what we were at the beginning of the year. You can come alongside and have that conversation, once a month, these check-in points or once a quarter or whatever, and say, hey, Ryan, just so you know, we got to kind of move some stuff. You're going to have to start paying more on your quarterly taxes so that at the end of the year when taxes are due, you're not going to have this massive bill, but like little by little, we're going to get there. And there's going to be less and less surprises by working with somebody like you. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think I've had this conversation with many people. I just had it with somebody that was just coming on right before I got on this call. And it's really about getting close, right, with your taxes. So I don't want you to be super overpaid and I don't want you to be super underpaid, because both are costing you money. If you get super underpaid, you're going to owe a whole bunch of penalties for being underpaid. If you're super overpaid, you're giving the government an interest-free loan, and the government, I know they're printing money these days, but they don't give out interest-free loans. Like they don't, right? And so you could be doing something else with that money. You could be growing your business, putting it into marketing, something, but now you've tied it up with the IRS. Who wants to do that, right? So let's at least get it close. And yeah, you want, if you're paying estimated based on last year's, that's fine. You won't owe any penalties. But if you, like you said, if you have a really good year, you're still going to get a big giant surprise with a bunch more taxes, and maybe you don't pay penalties on it, but now you owe $20,000, and if you don't have it, then you get to get on installment agreement with the IRS, and their interest rates are terrible. I mean, you might as well just go borrow from a bank, which who wants to borrow from a bank to go pay their taxes?
Not I. Not I,
No
said Rye
way.
Guy. So,
And
oh,
okay, go
yes.
ahead. I was gonna
And
say, and if you're planning through the year on what's going on in your business, there's ways to minimize those taxes, right? So we can plan for what you might owe, but we can also do things to put things into place that will help you save on taxes that you can't put in place after the year ends, right? Like we can't go buy equipment last year in the next year, right? We can't go put a 401k in place last year, this year. Like we can't do all that stuff after the year's done. So if you're not doing it currently, you're leaving money on the table, right? And so we can't do that stuff after the fact. So we do both.
yeah, I love that. Have you seen the episode of The Office where Oscar comes into Michael's office and he's like, Michael, we have a surplus. It's $1,000 surplus and we have to spend it by the end of the day. Have you seen this episode?
I don't think so.
Okay, it's just
No,
it is amazing. You need to see it because
barely.
Michael like looks at the camera like after Oscar tells him they got the surplus. He looks at the camera and you can tell he's like, I don't know what the heck he's talking about. He's like, can you explain it to me like I'm 8? And so Oscar said like breaks it down and it's like oh okay that make and then he's like, can you explain it to me like I'm 5? It's just like oh it's so good. But I think you could use that for people like me that really just tell it to me like I'm 5 years old, please. Why is this conversation today important? 1099 contracted employees versus or contractors versus W-2 employees. What is at stake here?
Well, I think there's three main important points here. Is you've got to classify somebody correctly, whether they're 1099, whether they're W-2, and it's not necessarily, and we'll get into some of the details later, but it's not, well, I want them to be a contractor, so they're a contractor, right? So you really need to look at whether they are a contractor or an employee. And the second one is that I would say that a lot of times contractors, and maybe not in the video business, but in other businesses, people misclassify contractors all the time that probably should be employees. There's probably a lot of those. And then lastly, the big one is if you don't classify them correctly and you get caught, everything's whether or not you get caught, right? The taxes, everything's on the honor system, so it's all about getting caught. But if you do misclassify them, and it'll come back and bite you. If it comes back and bites you, it's going to be painful. It just is. And for a small business, to get hit with a ton of payroll taxes, interest, and penalties and stuff on top of that, it's going to hurt big time. So it's always what do we say at the top? Do the right thing. Do the right thing, or it'll just be painful.
Well, I mean, the worst case scenario, what I'm hearing you say is that if we don't do the right thing, out of ignorance or whatever, and we've misclassified and we're not paying the taxes that we're supposed to be and whatever other stuff we're supposed to be paying, and there's an audit or something, and it's like, oh, shoot, you essentially, it could be so bad that you have to shut your business down, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Worst case scenario, for sure.
Worst case scenario. And that's
Absolutely.
that's what we want to avoid worst case scenarios in our video businesses. And we want to help give you the tools the tools and resources so that you can make wise decisions for you and your business. But, some people might be in a situation right now where they have a contracted person, but they actually should be an employee, or vice versa. Maybe they're an employee, and you could just contract them and save some money. So, let's kind of get into some of the nitty gritty here. What would you say some of the big differences between a 1099 and a contracted employee might be?
So, I mean, some of the obvious ones are, an employee is usually somebody who is more long term. They're there. I mean, if you have a retail business or an office or something, they're usually there with you doing different tasks for you for the business. I mean, it's pretty obvious those. Not to say that you're not paying them as employees, or not to say that you're not paying them as contractors, but that would be something that would be kind of like, office manager or something like that. Like that's probably an employee relationship. Contractors are usually temporary in nature. You go back to building a house, you've got a bunch of different contractors that go into building that house, right? And all these different contractors have, uh, they each have their own business, right? So they do it for multiple builders, they do it for multiple businesses. They stand to lose money. They have their own equipment. They have their own other workers. They it's their time. It's basically they're the ones setting their hours, right? There might be a project manager overseeing it, telling them they have to get it done on Wednesday, but that person's not telling them how they get it done. You don't go tell a drywaller how to do drywall. I don't know how to do drywall. That's what he does it for, right? And so, I mean, those are some of the obvious ones. There's probably a lot in the gray. I think a lot of people put people in the gray because they want to pay them as contractors or want to pay them as employees. Um, but yeah, I think overarching, it comes down to control. Who's controlling it? If the person that you're hiring is controlling what they do, how they do it, the level of their work, they're probably a contractor. If you're controlling it, you're controlling their hours, you're controlling where they work, how they work, when they work, giving them tools to work with, then they're probably employees.
Okay, so can I paint a couple of different scenarios here?
Absolutely.
Okay, and I know
Absolutely.
this is going to be very specific, but just so we're all kind of thinking the same stuff here. So I've got, over the years, I've got shooters or editors that have been working on different projects for us for years, right? So like when I was doing weddings for a decade, I had a couple of guys that like shot almost every single wedding with me. We'd shoot on Friday, they'd give me the footage, I'd go back to the studio, but we did that for years. Is that still a contractor ish?
See, and some of these can be gray areas. Were
Yeah.
they shooting for other people? Did they have their own equipment? Did they, if they were shooting for the general public and they had other people they were shooting for, they might be contractors, especially if they had their own equipment and you were just hiring them. Yeah, it was short-term basis, and maybe they did it over span of a whole year, and they were at most of the weddings that you did. It's not like you can't use a contractor for a long period of time, but that contract was just for that wedding, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah.
there wasn't anything else. Like I need you to go shoot this wedding. Now, if you were giving them equipment, telling them where to be, all that stuff, and that was like and they didn't really do it for the general public. Not to say that somebody couldn't just be your only contractor. I would say that would look more like an employee relationship. So that's one of those gray ones where it's like, well, how does this look? And some of the gray ones I always tell people, if somebody is going to be a contractor, make them act like a contractor. So this guy shooting for you at a wedding, if he's got his own equipment, have him start invoicing you for the work that he does so that you pay him an invoice. So it kind of looks like it has that contractor relationship feel.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, that's good. What about like I've got a whole list of processes. I mean, this is how I need this video edited. Like you're gonna open with this title sequence, and then you create the story, but I want you to use this song, and it needs to be 2 minutes long, and it needs to end with this text. Is that kind of what you're saying as far as like they've got to do it on their terms, or am I kind of muddying the?
Well, I mean, like okay, so like the home contractor, like the drywall guy, right? You're the project manager is going to tell him like, hey, I need it done this day. I need these walls, these type of walls, this type of texturing. Like I need. There's going to be specifics as far as what he needs. So like you telling them you need it 2 minutes, or you telling them you want this song on it or whatever. I don't think you're really having control over what they do. Besides like, hey, here's some of the points that I need from this video because of what the video is going to do. So I still think that that's probably more along the lines of a contractor relationship, right? And having
Yeah.
those people invoice you for their work would be a perfect, next step for that because especially if they had their own equipment, like if they're doing their own editing on their own editing equipment, that means they could do editing for anybody. Like they could do anything for me if I wanted them to, right? And so if they're doing it for multiple people, yeah, of course, I would say that's probably more along the lines of a contractor relationship for
Yeah.
sure.
Yep. Yeah, that makes sense. And then what about email address? Like if, at tellstudios.com, what if I gave a contractor an email address from my business?
Yeah, I haven't seen like we'll get into it later, but I don't think just giving them an email address really. I don't think you have any. That doesn't really give them any control. I mean, you could give me a Tell Studios uh, email address if you wanted. I don't want it, but but you could if you wanted. But and that might be just for some sort of workflow things or whatever you're using it for there. So I don't think that necessarily creates like an employee or a contractor. I think that's probably like a moot point, really. I think people would probably, you have to look at the whole picture,
Yeah.
right? You can't just say, well, he has a Tell Studios email address, so he's an employee. Well, what kind of work is he doing? What kind of control do you have over him, really? Yeah. Just because he has a Tell Studios email address, I don't think gives you a whole lot of control over him besides, I mean, maybe spying on his emails. I don't even know if you can do that. I don't know how all that stuff works. I'm no IT guy. But.
Well, you got to go to www.
Yeah, that's exactly right. www.tellstudios.com. I do not have an AOL email address either, okay, folks?
You mean
I have
a
Gmail. I am cool.
AOL.
Yes. You've got mail. No, I do not have one of those.
We have a question from Facebook user because Facebook user has not hit the button to share their image or the likeness of their image. Just teasing. The question is, what about the transition from freelancer to W-2? For example, we've worked projects together, but we want to make someone a full-time employee. How does that complicate or uncomplicate things?
Yeah, I don't think it necessarily complicates it. The only complicated part would be, if you don't do it beginning of the year, like say January 1st and make a cutoff, then you're going to have part of the year they're going to be 1099 and part of the year they're going to be W-2. So it's really comes down to a bookkeeping issue there. So you've got to make sure and give them their 1099 and issue their W-2 for the correct amounts.
Yeah. And we've done that. We've had, even earlier this year, we had Zach contracting for us, and then eventually we were like, man, let's offer him full time, and then we just transition him. And so, yeah, there's a little bit of like paperwork or whatever, but what we're going to gain from transitioning him to an employee is what we were really after. What would be some of the what are some of the benefits from going from contractor to employee from your perspective?
You're gonna get employee retention, so you're gonna get a lot more retention there. They're probably gonna be you're gonna get some loyalty there. They're probably gonna be there, longer term. They can partake in benefits as far as company benefits, whether it be retirement plans, healthcare benefits, whatever. I think a lot of the benefits for the employee stuff for the business owner is just more security, right? Like a contractor could just go do and just leave you anytime, right? You're just, it's a contractor. I mean, we've all dealt with contractors. I deal with them in my house all the time. They're late. They don't show up on time. Right? So I think you just get that security and when you get security and you get that safety there, the planning becomes easier when you know how much you're going to be paying somebody. So you kind of know what expenses are coming out. With a contractor, things might differ. With different projects, you probably know how much is coming out. So it's probably not a whole lot of benefit there. But yeah, I would say just security, knowing that you've got that employee.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Sure. And two, honestly, a day rate for any contracted director, shooter, editor is typically more expensive than a salaried employee. Somebody that so there is that cost savings that we've just seen across the board. I've never hired an employee or even talked to anybody that has done contract work that would want that hourly rate that you get as a contractor as a salary employee. That's just like.
Because the contractor has to pay his own taxes, has his own expenses and everything else, right? So the employee doesn't have any of those expenses. So you're just paying them a flat rate, and you're helping pay their taxes too.
Right.
So The contractor doesn't have any of that, so of course they're going to charge you a bigger rate
Right.
for
Yeah.
sure.
And then somebody brought up, you also have all the costs associated with employees and taxes and benefits and all that stuff. Yes. Yes to all of that. We'll get into that here shortly. I know a lot of people, and we've asked this question. I know you've worked with Tyler a little bit as we've kind of been back and forth over this one particular position. But over the years, a big question is always like, man, at what point should I go from having this person, who's been working with me? Maybe maybe it's an editor in there. They started out editing one project a month, and now they're editing two, and now they're roughly 15 to 20 hours a week. And so, well, technically, I could probably hire them, for 20 hours a week. At what point should somebody consider going from having a contractor to turning that person into an employee?
Yeah, so I don't think there's like a general, once they do 15 hours or 20 hours or any of that. I think it goes back to doing the right thing, right? So if somebody's been a contractor and they're truly going to become an employee, so you're going to start giving them equipment, you're going to start doing that stuff for them, then it needs to change at that point. So it takes looking at the relationship, and so when that relationship crosses over, it's time to do the right thing. So if you're already thinking like, hey, this person could be an employee, it's probably a good time to start thinking, I should probably turn this person into an employee. If you're already thinking that this person's already an employee, if that relationship is there, then it's probably time to start thinking about it for sure. And
Yeah,
it's
and
probably there anyways.
I'm kind of talking more from a numbers perspective. Like even that this person brought up, you've got costs associated with taxes, benefits, blah blah blah.
Sure.
I mean, part of that is knowing what costs might we not even be thinking about that go from having a contractor to an employee, and then some costs that we do know. If we offer benefits, I think we offer $50 or I don't know, something pretty insignificant for the year for like health or gym memberships or something like that.
Wellness or something. Yeah.
So I know there's that hard cost. As soon as somebody becomes an employee, they're getting that. They're getting 5 or 10 days of vacation. There's these different things, and I can tag numbers to that. So then if I'm paying them $50 an hour, I just know what some of those costs are versus like having them contract. What are maybe some other ones that we're not really thinking of that it would be good to add into the equation to see from a financial perspective, when does it make sense to convert somebody from a contractor to an employee?
Yeah, I think besides like the payroll taxes, the unemployment taxes, um, and then like you said, all of the different benefits that go into hiring an employee, along with the wage that you have to pay them, versus what you're paying a contractor, right? But again, I don't think that you necessarily that's not to say, okay, well, when that threshold's crossed, then we turn them into an employee, right? Because it's benefiting us. Like if the IRS came in and said, well, why are you not paying him as an employee? And you said, well, because it's not beneficial for me to pay them as an employee yet
I
because
looked
I'm
at the
saving money by.
numbers and
I looked at the numbers and it's cheaper if I pay them as an independent contractor. Not a very good reason
yeah,
for the
right.
IRS. Like it's probably not going to fly with the IRS. Oh, yeah, sure. It's just like people. I had a couple years ago. I had somebody tell me that, well, they had their LLC bank account, and as long as they ran it, they had an accountant tell them as long as it was ran through the LLC bank account, it was a business expense. And I'm like, I've never tried that one with the IRS, but I wonder what they would say about that. I don't think that works like that, but okay.
Oh no.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, you have to look at everything on which one's more expensive for sure. But then again, you've got to look at the whole package, the relationship, everything that is there, and just do the right thing.
Yeah, that's great. And I know we'll share the link here in a little bit, but there's a place where people can go and download this list of what are some of the things that would classify somebody as a contractor or employee? Because some people, watching or listening to this might be like, man, I'm actually not sure. I've got somebody that's been working with me that's not an employee, or at least I'm, not classifying them as an employee. To cross-reference this list, what should somebody do if they find out oh my gosh, this person actually, it seems like they should be an employee? What should they do at that point?
Do the right thing. Get them on payroll. I'm a big fan of letting sleeping dogs lie, I think is what it is. I wouldn't necessarily go back and like, I mean, you could go back and like amend everything and get them payroll and go pay all the back payroll tax. I would do the right thing going forward. If they're an employee, switch them over. If they're a contractor, switch them over. And then just do the right thing going forward for sure. Um, I think that's the best you can do
Yep.
because I mean, you're not gonna. I don't know. Going back and amending everything just seems like a big headache, and you've made it this far without worrying about it. So just change it and keep moving forward, and
Yeah.
just do the right thing going forward for sure.
Also, Jeremy nor myself are lawyers or providing legal advice. These are just scenarios. So, contact your own personal lawyer or, there's some
Or
sort of
tax professional if you want
tax
professional
professional.
advice
Yes,
for
exactly.
sure. Yes, that's awesome.
Well, what
We probably
else?
should have said that up front,
Yeah,
but
flash the text. Okay, yeah, maybe I'll do a
yes.
little. Okay, we're both professional, just not like that. What else? What are we missing? What do people? We're gonna get off this call shortly. And what are you gonna be like? Oh my gosh, we should have told people this. What are we leaving out?
Well, I think, as the one thing we talk about, how do you get caught, or how does somebody get into an audit or some sort of situation where this actually comes up? And I'll give you a perfect example. And I wanted to share this example because uh, I think this is what ends up happening. Oh, now I can see
Yeah,
little
I see
things
that.
on your screen. Oh, that's kind of cool.
Fancy.
She's a lawyer and a CPA. Nice. So uh, what ends up happening is you're paying somebody as a contractor. Um, they kind of view it as an employee relationship, right? And so because maybe you've been providing them all the equipment and everything, and it might be more of an employee relationship, but you've been treating it as a contractor relationship. So you've maybe misclassified them, but either way, that employee or that contractor, everything comes to an end, the person leaves, they go try to file unemployment because they thought they were an employee because contractors can't get unemployment, right? And so they go to file unemployment. Well, contractors can get unemployment now, but that's because of the CARES Act and COVID. But without COVID and CARES Act, they couldn't get it. And so they go file unemployment, and the Department of Labor, either at the state level or the federal level, goes, uh, you can't have unemployment because you don't have an employer. Nobody's ever paid unemployment on you before. They're not paying unemployment insurance on you, and then that raises red flags at the state level or the federal level with Department of Labor, or like in Oklahoma, it's the OESC, it's the Oklahoma Employees Security Commission. And then they end up going, I wonder why they thought they were an employee. Maybe we should go talk to this person and see
Mm.
why they thought they were an employee. And then that's when those audits end up rolling out. And that's when you end up getting caught. And then that stuff it gets reclassified as wages, and then there's penalties and interest and everything else. So it's just not something you want to get involved in. So that,
Agree.
yes.
Yes to that. Just so you know, Virginia is a filmmaker. She's not a. She's saying you should talk to both a CPA and a lawyer.
Oh,
Um,
okay. I was going to say, wow, you have CPAs and lawyers on this call
yeah.
too. That's
Well, you
awesome.
said that, and I was like, wait, isn't no. And then somebody said, this person said, "Hi, Jeremy, I owe you paperwork." I don't know who that is. It is a generic Facebook user, but
Hi,
somebody that you've
you
been
do owe
talking
me
to.
paperwork. I do have a text deadline coming up, so you must. I mean, there's several people that owe me several things. I wonder who that is.
Well, we're gonna open it up for if there are any more questions. Get your question in now. We do have this one here. Technically, okay, let me see if I can just. Okay, there you go. Technically, most all large commercial film jobs that I've done as a contractor still get run through W-2s, etc., even for 2 days of work. Legally, my understanding is that film crews are employees due to set days and hours, etc. What's the risk of choosing to pay people as 1099 in that scenario?
I mean, you use the word legally. So again, we're not lawyers here. But and the risk, I mean, the risk of audit just in general is not very high anyways, if we're going to be honest, right? Um, but if you pay people as 1099, again, there's probably not a whole lot of risk, but the risk reward there, right? If you do get caught, you could get, I mean, you're going to get penalized and it's going to hurt. So if you choose to pay people as 1099 in that scenario, but they're probably W-2s, then again, the risk isn't very high, but the pain is going to be real if you end up, if you're doing it wrong.
Yeah. So, not case in point. Jake Sturgis, a member of the Grow Your Video Business community, Studio Sherpas community, he was on the podcast on episode 236. So you can go listen to that episode if you go to studiosherpas.com/236. And Jake last year did incredible. He had $1 million year in his video production business in one of the toughest years ever. But he was in the right industry, pivoted, offered something that people that schools needed, and just crushed it last year. But prior to last year, at some point, I forget how long ago, he was audited, and it was a nightmare. So go listen to that. And actually, I have another friend, my friend Matt Davis, who helped start Studio Sherpas 5 years ago. Again, I don't remember. I think it was actually right around the same time that we started Studio Sherpas. He got audited, and it was terrible and ugly, and he had a lot of money to back pay, and it was just really, really dumb. So it can happen. Doesn't happen a lot. I mean, I don't know. I hardly know anybody, at least in the video world, that has, but a couple of people that I actually do know have been. So do the right thing. It's just smarter. It's better. You can sleep easier. And
and like you said, it's not always. It's the contractors are sometimes more expensive than the W-2 employees, right?
Right.
Because of their day rate. So if you're just paying somebody, just a contractor, just to save money for yourself, it's just worth looking at and saying, am I just doing this because I want to save money, or is this person actually charging me what a contractor would charge me? Because if you're just paying them, it's like lawn care companies and stuff. A lot of times they want to pay their employees as contractors when they're typically employees, but they're just doing it to pay them as contractors because they want to save money on taxes. It's really what it boils down to.
Yeah.
So.
Sage advice from our legal expert, Jeremy Doorn. Just kidding. I'm kidding. It's not.
Oh, this is live. You can't even go back and get rid of that. All right. Yeah. My laundry is hanging right here in my office.
Let's see. Virginia's got something. She says, I had contractor editors newly graduated from technical school, and they were not taught anything about contracts, and they thought they were employees. I had something.
I assume I teach them the difference.
Oh, yeah. She taught them the difference. I spoke to their teacher and highly recommended that he add that info to their curricula. I had to be clear about this repeatedly. Yeah, super smart. That's great.
Well, yeah, and I think that's one of the other things too is employees you typically have to train, right? A contractor you wouldn't have to train, right? They should be doing that. They should be in the business of doing whatever they're doing for you. If you've got to train somebody, it's probably an employee relationship, I would imagine.
Yeah, it's interesting. I remember back in the day, we would do, when we were at our peak doing weddings, we were doing 40 weddings a year, and I had a few employees, but we had probably 4 or 5 contractors, and then we had interns, and we, at the beginning of every wedding season, we would do like a day workshop where we would just kind of like go over like, this is how you film the bridal prep, this is how you use these new cameras that we got, this is how you use these what were they called? iReverse, our little recorders. Oh man, blast from the past there. So we would do that stuff, and I kind of feel like that sort of stuff was fine. Like it was okay. I don't know if it's gray area or not, but it's kind of like workshop, like free education. But if you're going to shoot for us, like we need you to kind of get these kinds of shots, and this is how you do that, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, you look at somebody that's we can go back to the home builder thing too, right? Like, I mean, it's you're not training them how to do it. You're just kind of
Yeah.
giving them some standards that your company has that they just need to live up to. That I
Yeah.
don't think that necessarily in itself creates an employee relationship or constitutes training, right? Like, um, but yeah, I
Yep.
think those things are okay.
Yeah. And
I
Virginia
would say.
mentions this too. She says, interns, that's another potential IRS issue unless you pay them. Yes. That whole thing, we just stopped doing interns because it was just like,
Or you can just do an intern and just pay them. Like, just
right.
everybody
Yes.
always thinks of
Yeah. I'm
intern
sorry. I'm
as
sorry.
somebody that just sits there and works for free, right? Like,
Right.
this is an intern.
Yep.
Just pay them.
Just
Pay
pay
them
them.
minimum wage or something,
Yep.
and call them an intern. Whatever,
Yep.
like whatever floats your boat, or don't do them for
Right.
sure.
Because the challenge was if you don't pay them, you have to provide equal amount training as they do work for you. And it was like, how do we even figure that out? It was just like too hard. So then
How do you
we just
calculate that?
started paying people that, we would call them interns, or we're like, let's just get rid of the intern. If we're going to pay them, like, let's just call them like a entry level editor or something like that. So, yeah.
Yes.
There is another question here. What's the best way? This is also from Facebook user, anonymous Facebook user. I'm not sure if it's the same
Is
Facebook
this the
user or a
paperwork?
different one.
Oh, I was gonna say, I wonder if he owes me paperwork
Yeah.
for 1099.
What's the best way to calculate payroll costs for productions that can be billed back to your clients?
That would be a question for you, Mr.
Yeah.
Payroll.
I was like, what's
Mr.
he gonna say here?
Yeah, Mr. Wedding Shooter. That would be best. I think that's a great question for you.
Yeah. Best way to
How would
calculate
you build that back?
payroll costs for productions that can be billed back to your client. I mean, so if you've never purchased the budget maximizer, if you're not using this spreadsheet, get it. And I think you can go to studiosherpas.com/budget maximizer. I think will get you there. And essentially, like, when you're paying, whether it's an employer or contractor, if there are fees, like you want to make sure that you're paying people what they need to make. And then when you're charging for your jobs, you're not, I would never, let's say I had a $20 an hour employee and I sent that employee on a job like, hey, I need you to go shoot 10 hours tomorrow. So that's $200 I'm going to owe that person for the 10 hours that they put in tomorrow. I wouldn't charge the client $200, right? That makes zero sense. I would charge them.
Breaking even in business is not the point.
Right. That's not why I got into business, was to give people jobs. I like doing that. So I need to charge them a lot more than just $200, especially they're using my gear. They're using my employee. I can't use that employee, today. We're giving them something that they can't get on their own. They can't do this with their iPhone. That's why they're calling us to do. So there needs to be some profit, like on top of what it costs us to pay that employee. Otherwise, it makes zero sense. So that's how we factor in. When I say, hey, if you can get a 60% profit margin on your time or on your employee's time, there's a lot of room inside of that 60% that can cover payroll costs, and that will cover taxes, and that can help cover your rent and even potential bonuses that you can pay yourself and your employees.
Well, and to further that point, even though I don't shoot weddings, because now I kind of understand what they might be asking as far as calculating payroll costs. So you said, I send somebody $20 an hour for 10 hours, that's $200, but you're going to pay a lot more than $200 for that employee, right? Because you've got to pay the payroll costs on that. So if you want to know what the payroll costs are, payroll costs for the business is half of Social Security and Medicare, which is 15.3%, which half of that is 7.65%. So you have to add 7.65% of that wage as payroll costs that your business is going to end up paying, right? So, and then there's some unemployment. So, and unemployment varies from state to state, but it's usually a very small percentage. So I usually add 1% in for unemployment, and then any of the other benefits, if they have health benefits or 401k or simple or any of that kind of stuff, then you can add in that kind of stuff if they're participating, as far as what the payroll cost would be. But I would say minimum of like 8.65% plus whatever wage you're paying it is going to be how much you're going to end up coming out of pocket for business, and then you can put that profit margin on top of that.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. So I added the clarification there. This person gave us a little more context there. That is super helpful. So just to further my point, if I'm adding 60% or making a 60% profit margin on this, $20 an hour employee, I am well covered beyond that 8.5% that Jeremy is talking about. And that's what I need, because I've got a project manager that's working on this project, and I'm not billing for a project manager's time. So some of that has to come from somewhere. And part of that comes from, this person being out there at more than $200 for tomorrow's 10-hour shoot. So hopefully that's helpful. Another question here: are you paying them as an employee or contractor? Not sure who you're talking about. An employee,
Play them as an employee.
Yeah, employee that you're concerned about payroll taxes and that sort of thing. A contractor, you're not paying any of that stuff.
Yeah.
So good stuff. Virginia says great points. Love this. Hey, Virginia, thanks. Glad you're here.
Who needs a CPA or a lawyer when you got us? Right, Virginia?
That's right. Awesome. Hey, this has been awesome. Jeremy, thank you for your insight. Always really helpful. It's fun to spend time with you and, make fun of you that you use www before you type in email or websites. I don't know the difference either. So.
I'm never going to live this down. I love it. Oh my gosh. And it's so funny because I said it and then you repeated it back to me and I went, oh, geez.
I saw your head bowing like as soon as it rolled off your tongue. I was like, "Ooh, gotcha." So, if you don't know, Core Group is our title sponsor for the podcast. You can find out more about them if you go to studiosherpas.com/core. They have been a great partner for this brand, but also they've been a great partner for my businesses and personal taxes and strategy for finances. So check them out. Go give them some love. You can get a free call with their team, and there's even some sort of a Studio Sherpas discount when you click on that link, and it shows them that you came from me. Or you just be like, Jeremy or whoever you talk to, like, I know Ryan. He sent me, and tell him Ryan
sent you. Name drop one of us, and you'll be name drop me and you'll be good. But it's fine.
That's yep. And to name drop Jeremy, it's www.jeremy.doorn. Okay, I'm done. Sorry. You guys have been great. Thanks for hanging out with us. Jeremy, appreciate it as always, my friend.
Always a pleasure, man. It was fun. Thank you very much
for
having me.
See you, buddy.
All right, bye.
Hey, friend, thank you again for joining me on this live workshop replay. Whatever. Maybe you were there live. Maybe you were there live. And again, just a reminder, if you're not inside of the Grow Your Video Business Facebook group, I would love to see you inside of there. It's just a great community, and we're adding new people every single day. And it's the energy is exciting, and we're just learning and growing from each other. So join the Facebook group. Leave a comment below if there's a takeaway from this episode. If there's something that you're just like, wow, this was new information, cool stuff, whatever. Would love to hear how you are enjoying these episodes. So leave a comment if you're watching on Facebook or inside of or on our Facebook, YouTube page, whatever, wherever you're watching this. And if you're not watching it, then shoot me a message. I'm found at ryan@studiosherpas.com. Would love to hear from you. Have an amazing day, and I'll see you on the next episode. Oh, man.